Ja, meine Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen nach der Kaffeepause. Es geht spannend weiter mit dem Thema virtuelle Welten, Virtual Worlds for Real Life, New Hope in Modern Medicine and Surgery. Und ich freue mich jetzt sehr auf Claire Biot. Sie ist Vice President Life Science and Healthcare Industry bei Dassault Systèmes. Liebe Claire, this is your stage. I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Thank you. Hallo, vielen Dank für die Einladung und Entschuldigung, dass ich auf Englisch sprechen werde. So I'm going to switch to English now. I think it's better for me to convey the message. And so I'm very happy to be here today to tell you through some stories we have built with the virtual twin of the human body. And I will start by telling you why and then share examples. So at Dassault Systèmes, we're the second largest tech provider in Europe, and we were born 43 years ago around a very important belief, which is that virtual worlds extend and improve the real world. Well, why does it matter? You have all been exposed to metaverse, but here we do metaverse for real life. What is important for us is not to build virtual universes for fun, but really because we want to improve the real world. And how does it work? Well, if you build a virtual twin of a product, before producing it itself, you can optimize its cost, you can save time, you can make it more sustainable. That's obvious. But you can also collaborate differently between different stakeholders. We were born in aerospace, and at the beginning, you would hire mathematicians that would be very good at space geometry because they would have to look at the 2D map of the plane, and they would have to project the 3D shape in their mind. Not super easy to collaborate, right? And think about the healthcare system. How wonderful would it be if we could improve collaboration across different specialists when they look after a patient? That's what we want to achieve. And that's actually what's happening in the car industries. For 30 years now, crash tests for cars have been run in silico. You crash test thousands of cars, virtual cars against virtual walls, and you can improve the design of the car. And so the question we asked something like 15 years ago was, can we do the same with the human body? With the idea that you would never like to test a new treatment, a new drug, a new device on the patient, but you would like to first experience it in the virtual twin of a patient. And obviously, the human body is much more complex than a car, but I will show you examples of what we do. But first, why would we care? Well, we think that it's really time to act now, and I think we have heard it in many of the presentations and the panels today. Very shortly, only 2/3 of the worldwide population has access to essential care today, and in developed countries like Germany, the healthy life expectancy doesn't progress as much as life expectancy, yet healthcare expenses grow twice faster than GDP. So we see it's not sustainable. And our ecosystem has really engaged in some transformations. 6 of them are displayed on the screen. The first one is that we see patients that move from being passive to empowered. And if you think about wearables, 87% of people wearing these type of devices actually use them to track health metrics. And also think about Apple that released recently new features for the Apple Watch to predict AFib and sleep apnea, and the AirPods that are now used as hearing aids. Second, I think, is an obvious moving from one size fits all to personalized therapies. 47% of the FDA-approved drugs last year belong to that category. The third one is from fee-for-service to value-based care. If you look at Medicare and Medicaid, by 2030, they have committed that all their contracting will be value-based. The fourth one, what about physicians? We want them to move, the system transforms from them being burnt out and in too low a number, 10 million shortage predicted by 2030, to being augmented. We also want to see a transformation from siloed care to coordinated patient journey. It's roughly 8 hours. It can be up to 8 hours that are spent by patients monthly to coordinate care across different specialists. And then the last move is a move from treatment to prevention. Only 5% of expenses in developed countries today are spent in prevention, yet the Lancet has released an article where they predict that $700 billion could be saved if on preventable health risks. So based on that, what do we do? Well, today, the virtual twins of the human body that I will show you serve mostly life science companies, biopharma companies or medtech companies that craft drugs, medical devices, and more digital apps. But we also plan to put this technology in the heads of physicians and patients, for physicians to improve medical practice and share best practices, and for patients to make better informed decisions. And so then to craft our solutions and to really understand the use cases we want to develop, we really start with thinking about what our customers value the most. And if I boil it down to the essential, patient centricity or caregiver centricity for medtech, innovation and excellence, doing breakthrough science, sharing best practices when you're a physician, and sustainability. And I will go fast through this. Sustainability actually starts with quality, the drug being available, cybersecurity, data privacy. We've heard a lot about that in the previous panels. And obviously also patient access. Think about sustainable goal, development goal number 3, 100% access to essential healthcare by 2030, and protect our planet. We've seen a massive burst of life science companies that subscribe to Science-Based Target Initiative to move towards carbon neutrality. And so that being said, what we provide to our customers is a scientific and business platform to develop therapeutic innovation and medical practice excellence. So if you think about the journey of a patient, and I will start to the right, it starts for a patient by having their own self-assessment, self-monitoring, and then if they feel they're sick, they will consult a doctor, there will be a diagnostics, a medical decision, treatment, and follow-up. And that will be based on drugs and devices that are developed by life sciences companies that will start by research and discovery, do the pharmaceutical development of the drug or the engineering of the medical device, run clinical trials, manufacture the health product. Obviously, they will respect a quality management system and have a regulatory process so that then they can commercialize the drug that will be used, prescribed by a doctor and used by a patient. And so today we play mostly to the left part of this chart, covering accelerating the innovation cycle from early research all the way through development, but we also plan to play on the right part as well. And I will share examples of the use of the virtual twin of the human body on both sides of that infinite loop. But just a few numbers. When I tell you that we serve life sciences companies today, we are proud to have 14,000 customers, biopharmas, medtech, but also some hospitals, all the top 20 biopharmas and medtech, including the German ones, top 10 contract research organizations, but also a very large number of small and medium-sized companies that really drive innovation. And just one KPI, last year 65% of the FDA-approved drugs have been developed using our software. So with that, let me start with the examples I'm excited to share with you this afternoon. The first one will be in development. It's actually a biopharma company that is working in CNS, central nervous system disorders, and for that, they need the drug to pass the blood-brain barrier, and they have to inject intrathecally in the spine. And so the question they asked was, what is the best location to inject the drug so that the drug is going to reach the spine, but each spot in the spine actually has their own challenges? So we have built a virtual twin of the brain and of the spine, and we have been able to model the diffusion of the drug in the cerebrospinal fluid, which doesn't have a circulatory system, right? It's just going to move by secondary action like breathing or gravity. And so we have been able to model the diffusion of the drug in the brain. Now, interestingly, we have done that for virtual twin of the human brain, but also for primates, and the results were actually so good that that company could develop the drug without going into primates in the preclinical development, saving a lot of time and money, not to speak about ethical concerns. So that's my first example. The second one will be in clinical trials and will concern drug. Have you heard about synthetic control arms? Please raise the hand if you have. All right, I see a few hands, but I will explain what it is. You know that to run a clinical trial, you will have to compare your investigational treatment, your treatment of interest, against placebo or standard of care. And so you're going to run 2 arms with the same number of patients. That's called a randomized control trial. Now, that standard of care itself had to go through a market authorization, so had to go through a clinical trial itself. And now, as our company, through our Medidata brand, is the leader in the digitalization of clinical trials, we have access to a lot of results from these previous clinical trials, so that we can replace the real patients that are in the treatment arm, in the control arm, by data, historical data from previous clinical trials. What do regulators say about that? Well, actually, both FDA and EMA are in favor of the use of synthetic control arms in specific conditions, especially in rare diseases that do not have a satisfactory standard of care. Why so? Because, and when I say rare diseases, by the way, it can be oncology, because you know that oncology more and more is a series of rare diseases, each of them having their own pattern. Why so? Because it's more ethical. You don't give to half of the patients a standard of care that you know is not going to work, and it's going to help you enroll more patients and give access to innovation faster. So what are the use cases we are happy to report? It can be used in different stages in the development. It can start early. For example, Imenon, in the case of ovarian cancer, had phase 1 data and wanted to project the size of their phase 2. And they built with us a synthetic control arm to understand the size of the effect of their drug. And based on that, they were actually able to reduce by 20 the number of patients they had to enroll in their phase 2. For a startup company, 20 patients means $1.6 million, so it can be a lot of money, and time is also of the essence for them. Second example is the Holy Grail. It's in the late stage and regulatory use. So with Medicena in recurrent glioblastoma, we have been able to propose to FDA, they proposed, and we consulted for them, a hybrid trial, meaning that the control arm would be made of a mixture of real patients and synthetic patients. That phase 3 is actually ongoing now. And the third one is actually interesting. It's after market authorization, when you go to discussions with payers. I've been working at the Ministry of Health in France some years ago, doing pricing and reimbursement, and we know that each country in Europe can have their own practices and different comparators. And sometimes, as a pharma company, you cannot run your trial against 3 or 4 different comparators. So using a synthetic control arm in that case can be very valuable. NICE in England is actually supporting this kind of approach and has released guidance and has actually approved a drug by Kite in ALL, again, oncology. In France, we see some moving lights. I have to say that EQUIC, for the moment, in Germany is more reluctant to this kind of approaches. But I'm happy to discuss at the break with you about that. So that was my example number 2. Now, let's stay in clinical trials, and I'm going to share another example. I've been talking now about a synthetic control arm. What about a synthetic treatment arm? Meaning, could you simulate, could you crash test a medical device in a virtual twin of the patient before you go to the real patient? That's actually the question that we have asked in a partnership with FDA that has lasted for 5 years, and I'm going to walk you through it. So it starts with inspiration and a conviction by the executive director of CDRH, the body in FDA that oversees medical devices, that we have to change the paradigm, moving from years to approve a medical device to days or months. And so here you have the typical process it would take for a medtech company. When they engineer a new device, they would design, do bench test, animal test, human test on cadavers. I've done that. I've been overseeing this when I was at APHP. It has to be done, but not easy. Animal trials, and then ultimately your clinical trial, so that at the end of the day, you might fail late, and it can be very expensive and very long. So our bet was to shorten that cycle by using virtual twin of the human body, both in the first phase of engineering and then for the validation. And so you see behind me the use case we chose. So we have been leveraging the living heart model that we have. It's a virtual twin of the human heart that is very strong both in terms of anatomy, electromechanic behavior, fluid dynamics. It's been built by a consortium of roughly 100 participants, medical device companies, cardiac surgeons, academic researchers, and FDA. And so the disease model we chose was mitral valve regurgitation. With aging, you have to know that your mitral valve can have difficulties to close, and if it doesn't close well, the blood will leak back and stand still, and that can cause strokes afterwards. And so that has to be repaired. Up to now, you would cut the chest open and put a valve, a mechanical valve to replace, which is a very invasive surgery. And now there are a lot of new devices that come as a new wave of innovation that are minimally invasive, and it can be either a repair device or a replacement device. And so what you see on this chart is, and you see a repair device to the left. And so you see images of our living heart model, and we are able to reproduce the defect of the valve that doesn't close well. And then we're going to generate a synthetic cohort of patients and apply a repair device to this cohort. And I will share a bit more details about how it works. So it all starts with real patient data. We're going to get images from a handful of patients. And out of that, we're going to build virtual twins, personalized virtual twins for this handful of patients. And then it's not enough. We want to generate a larger cohort to be representative of the real world. And so using generative AI techniques, we have been generating a synthetic cohort based on these handful of patients that all have very slightly different defects in terms of physiology of the mitral valve. So now you get the synthetic population that can be hundreds of thousands of patients. And then what we did was that we applied the inclusion-exclusion criteria of the clinical trial of a repair device. And then we looked at the regurgitation of the patient prior and after device application. And the question was, can we reproduce the results from the real trial? The answer is yes. We have published this in a peer-reviewed article, co-signed with FDA, and I don't have time to share more information, but if you're interested, you can take a picture of that QR code and you can find much more information on our website. So that was my third example, leveraging the virtual twin of the human body for an in silico clinical trial. Let me now move to the real world. The drug has been developed, and we want to see what happens. Actually, I'm going to take one more parallel with what we do in aerospace. You know, we do not only build the virtual twin of the plane, but we're able to do personalized twins of each of the planes in operation. If you change a piece in the engine, we will do this in the virtual twin as well so that we are constantly up to date with what happens to that plane. Well, the idea is we can do the same with patients, right? Because there are so many sensors out there that are available to monitor a lot of parameters, your sleep, your mobility, your heartbeat, etc. So the idea is not only to build your virtual twin at a given time, but to maintain your virtual twin over time. To put it another way, for us, the virtual twin should be the EHR of the future, your health record of the future, so that you're able to understand your own health and make better informed decisions. And that maintained virtual twin you could also make available to your physician so that they could make better diagnosis and medical decisions. And so that's one example. It's live today. Dr. Hoganson, who is the head of the service for congenital heart diseases at Boston Children's Hospital, actually uses our living heart model to plan for surgery before going to children. And so he's able to model the way the blood is going to flow in the heart of the patient in different conditions, resting patient, during sport, effort, or in postprandial wave. And he says that almost always he has an idea when he sees the imagery of the patient, but after building the virtual twin of the patient, he's going to change the way he's going to intervene on the patient. So with that, I'm wrapping up my presentation. I decided to focus today on the virtual twin of the human body and to share some examples of what we currently do to improve therapeutic innovation, accelerate access to innovation for patients, or to achieve medical practice excellence and informed decisions for patients. But actually, there are many more twins that we can build. For example, the virtual twin of the hospital as a way to understand the setting in which the care is given, or the virtual twin of the manufacturing line so that we can improve the way the drug is going to be manufactured. But I didn't have time to cover this all. So if you are eager to read more, you can download our latest white paper. And with that, I'm happy to close this keynote, and I have probably time for one question.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much, Claire. So the question I would like to ask you is, do you already have a use case in Germany where you're actually using this technology?
Actually, with a German pharma company, we have been using the data collection from patients to actually identify patients for clinical trials before the clinical trial would start. So I would say we have the premises to build the virtual twin with that pharma company, and it was in the context of a clinical trial.
So this is the next step, implementing such a project here in Germany.
And we have Professor Hélène Kuhl. She's one of the founding members of the Living Heart Project, based out of Stanford, but she's, I think, doing a sabbatical in Germany today. So I think there is a lot of room for us to build great partnerships with German hospitals.
Yeah, it's super interesting actually for me to see these big visions become so, feasible with that kind of technology. Thank you very much, Claire, for your keynote. It was very inspiring, and you'll be around for everybody who's interested to learn more about the technology and the vision behind it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.